This house was my gran's. I was reared in it after my own mother died young. My gran took me and kept me, and she kept its shelf the way she kept everything, without a word of fuss. 50 years without one Sunday missed. And there came a winter I was 9, one of the lean ones, the fishing gone and the flower dear. And I was a growing boy, hungry the way only a growing boy is hungry, that aches. And I knew there was good food down the cellar, on the low shelf, going to waste as I saw it, for an old woman's fancy. And 3 nights running I crept down in the dark and ate the keeping. I thought I was clever, feeding myself, no harm done, the old woman none the wiser. She knew by the 3rd day. She went down and saw the shelf swept that she'd filled herself, and she never said a word to me, not one word of blame, then or ever. And I've wished my whole life she'd have struck me instead, because that night the cold came up the steps. I was meant to hear it, I think. It wore my grandfather's voice that I'd never heard living but knew, calling up soft and glad, "Mary, Mary, come down, it's cold." And I lay in my bed, and my blood went to water, and I heard my gran get up and go to the top of the cellar steps in the dark, and she stood there a moment. I've had 70 years to think what she stood there thinking. And then she went down to it, and pulled the door shut behind her, so it would have her, and not come up through the house looking in the dark, for the hungry boy who'd left the shelf bare. They found the door shut in the morning, and my gran gone, and the shelf I filled that day with my own hands, shaking, 9 years old, is the shelf under this floor tonight, and I've not let it go empty in the 70 years between, not one single day. That's not thrift, what I do down those steps of a Sunday. It's not even respect, quite. It's the only sorry I've ever been able to say to her, said over and over, in the one language the thing under this town understands, which is a debt kept up. So you'll understand now why I watched a kind young man carry his keeping out on a shovel with the word "don't" in my mouth, and never said it. I minded my own door too well. I'll not do it again. That's partly why I tell you these. So, that's one more house that knows. There, the kettle's stone cold, and I've talked the fire down, and I'll not send you off frightened of your own good, clean, modern cellar. You likely haven't got a shelf, nor a thing under your floor that wants feeding, and long may it stay so. But if ever you come to live in an old house, in an old town, and find down in the cold of it a little shelf with a plate on it of food gone bad, you leave it. Don't clean it away to make the place nice. Find out what it wants kept and keep it. Somebody, a long time ago, in a hard winter you can't imagine, gave something down into that ground so the rest of them could live. The least we do is not let them be forgotten. Off home with you now, into the warm, and mind the step at the bottom. The fire's lit again next Friday. Mind how you go. It's a simple enough thing to keep, once you're used to it. And it sounds like nothing at all to a stranger, which is the whole of the danger in it. You keep your eyes to the path when you're out at dusk near the woods. You call your children in before the light's fully gone, and if you see the tall figure at the tree line lift its hand, you look at your feet and you walk on, and you do not lift yours. That's it. That's the custom. Country manners, a visitor would call it if they even noticed. A shyness of the woods. We teach it soft to the little ones so as not to frighten them off going out at all. There's a good man down the field, we say, but he's a shy sort and it's rude to wave at him. He doesn't like it, it startles him, so we leave him be. And the children take it the way children take all the real rules, without needing the reason, and they grow up with their hands kept easy at their sides at dusk, the way you'd grow up not putting your fingers in the fire. By the time they're old enough to ask what's really down there, they've kept the custom so long they don't want the answer. Nor did I at their age. Now, that figure at the tree line cannot come to you, not on its own, not a step out from under those trees, however long it stands there. And it can stand a very long time. It waits at the line because the line is as far as it may come, unless you give it leave. And a wave is leave. A wave, a called out hello, a hand lifted back, any small sign from you that says I see you and I'll answer you. That's the door swung open. That's you telling it, come up. And it will. Slow and glad and grateful. But it will come. We dress the reason up, mind, the way this town dresses up all its hard old reasons in something you could tell a child. Shy of strangers, we say. Doesn't like a fuss. And that's true enough as a shape of it. It does keep back, it does wait to be welcomed, same as a polite guest waits on the step. But a guest waits because it would be rude to walk in. This one waits because it can't. Not till you ask it. And it wants to be asked more than a starving man wants bread. So it stands where the light gives out, and it lifts its hand, patient as the seasons, night after night, to every soul that crosses that field at dusk, waiting on the one who forgets, or the one who never learned, or the one who's just kind enough to wave back at a lonely-looking figure a long way off in the cold. Because it does look lonely. That's the cruelty of the shape it wears. It looks like somebody who'd be glad of company, and it has all the time in the world to look like that. There's the shape of it, then, to hold while your tea goes cold. Keep your eyes down, keep your hand down, and never, ever answer the one at the tree line, however kindly it waves. Now let me tell you about the people who moved into the old Treeline place at the top of our field. Nice people from away. And about the evening, the wife stood at her new garden wall, and, meaning nothing in the world by it but neighbourliness, waved back. The Hallorans they were. A young family, mother, father, 2 little girls, come up from somewhere south in city, wanting the quiet, wanting their children reared with grass to run on instead of a road. Lovely people. She'd bring me the first slice off a cake she'd baked, and stop at the wall for a proper talk, and the little ones called me Mr. David, and went shy when I teased them. I was fond of the 4 of them, and that fondness is tangled up in what I did and didn't do, which I'll get to because it's mine to carry. They took the old Treeline place right at the top of our own field, stood empty a good few years, that house since old Treeline passed, and nobody local had rushed to take it. And the Hallorans never thought to wonder why a sound house with that view went so cheap and sat so long. Why would they? They did it up lovely. And of an evening, the wife, Sarah her name was, got in the habit of standing at her new low garden wall at the end of the day with a cup of something, looking down over her field to the woods, the way you would, the way anybody would. It's a beautiful spot at dusk. That's rather the trouble with it. And one evening, 3 weeks or so after they came, She was at her wall in the blue of it, and down at the tree line there was a man. Tall, she'd have thought, and far off, and keeping very still at the edge of the trees, looking up the field at her house. And she watched him a moment, the way you do, half wondering, was it a rambler lost his path? And he lifted his hand to her. Slow, a big, easy, glad wave, like a man greeting a friend he'd spotted across a market. And Sarah Halloran, new to the place, kind to her bones, not a scrap of the custom in her, because how could there be? Sarah lifted her cup and her hand and waved back down the field. Friendly, neighbourly, evening. She'd have called, likely, into the cold. And then she went in and thought no more of it than you'd think of holding a door. I saw it. I was at this very window with my own lamp lit, and I saw her at her wall, and I saw the hand go up at the tree line, and I saw her wave back, and I stood up out of my chair with my heart gone to my boots, because I knew, I have always known. And I'll tell you what I did, so you have the measure of me before you decide what you think of the rest. I sat back down. I told myself she was a grown woman, and it was her house and her field, and it was likely nothing. Likely the old talk was only ever old talk, and that a man of my years does not go banging up the field in the dark to tell a young mother she's damned herself with a friendly wave. So I kept my own door. Me, and I'll tell you before we're through why it's me, of all the souls in this town who had the very least excuse for keeping it. It started gently, the way it always starts here. So gently they'd no cause to be afraid. The little girls came in to breakfast a week or so after and said, quite pleased, that there was a nice tall man come to stand in a field at night, much nearer now, just past the wall. And he waved to them from their bedroom window. And wasn't it friendly? And could they wave back? And Sarah, good sensible mother that she was, said, of course, why not? Wave to the nice man, and thought it was a game, or a dream, or the fence post, and the moonlight, and a child's imagination stitching them into company, which is exactly what I would have told them. That's the terrible mercy of the thing. It never once asks you to believe in it. It only asks you to wave. It doesn't rush. It has never once needed to. Once it's been let leave to come, once that first hand's been lifted back to it, it comes up the field toward the house one length at a time, one dusk at a time, and it only ever comes as far as it's been answered. So the more they waved, those kind girls at their window, the nearer it stood the next night. The tree line the first week, the middle of the field the next, and near enough by the month's end that Sarah, at her own kitchen sink of an evening, would look up, and there'd be the shape of a tall man standing quite still just beyond her garden wall in the dark, faced to the house. She stopped thinking it was a rambler around then, and started keeping the curtains shut at dusk. But shut curtains are no good to you once you've said come up. The door's the door, whether you watch it swing or not. She came to me at last. Across the wall one grey afternoon, in the safe flat light of the middle of the day when there was never anything in the field at all, and she asked me, trying to make it a joke and not able to, did I know anything about the man who stood in the field at night? And I looked at that frightened young woman, and I told her the truth I should have told her 3 weeks before. I told her about the tree line, and the hand, and the custom, and the one rule, and I watched her go the colour of ash. because she'd not only waved that first evening, she'd taught her babies too. Every night. She'd been holding the door open for a month and calling it being friendly. And she asked me, the way they all ask me, was there anything to be done? And there is. There's exactly one thing. You stop. You put the hand down and you never lift it again. Not once. Not for anything. And you don't answer it and you don't look at it. And you teach the whole house to do the same. And you hold that however near it's got, and however long it stands there wanting. Because it can't take the last step. Not that one. It can come up to your very door and stand the whole night through, near enough you'd hear it breathe if it breathed. But it cannot cross your threshold, and it cannot lay a hand on you unless you give it that one last leave. It needs you to answer it over your own doorstep. So you don't. You go dark and you go silent and you wait it out, all of you, and you do not so much as say, go away to it, because go away is you seeing it, and it will take even that. It is very patient. But so can a family be when they understand at last what stood in their field. And they held. I'll give the Hallorans that. I'll give it them for the rest of my life. When they understood, they held like the town holds. Curtains shut, hands down, not a word to the thing at the door. Through night after night of it standing just there past the glass, faced in, waiting. The little girls slept in their parents' bed with the light off and were brave as I've known grown men fail to be. And it never got in. By the spring, they sold up and went back to their road and their south and their street lamps. And I don't blame them 1 inch. And Sarah gripped my hand at the gate the morning they left and thanked me for telling her in the end. A thing like that, once it's had your hand, doesn't forget it. It had a whole month of the Hallorans answering it, learning them, 4 faces at a lit window, night after night. And a thing that old, that patient, does not forget the ones who let it come. Wherever they went, whatever field they end their days beside, Sarah Halloran will stand at some window at the blue hour, some evening years from now, in a town that never heard of us. And there'll be a tall shape at the far edge of wherever she's got to, keeping very still, lifting its hand. Glad to see her. It found the door once. It knows her knock now. And all she can ever do, all any of them can do, all I have done for 70 years, is keep the hand down and shut the curtain and never, ever answer it again. You don't get free of it. You only get careful. Now, let me tell you what it is, and why the line was ever drawn. Let me tell you about the winter of 1698, and the first hand this town ever lifted at the Treeline. You know some of this now, if you've sat with me before. The town was made in the winter of 1698 by some 40 souls who came down the coast to this harbour in the worst of it, running from a war they'd give a king's name to after, King William's. The long burning up and down the eastern edge, the far settlements gone in the night, and the survivors fleeing south with what they could carry. You've heard me tell how the killing frost caught them here in the open, and how the ground went too hard to bury their dead, and what they did about that, down in the cellars, in the warm ground under the first floors. That's a tale for indoors. This is the one for the window, and it's older than the cellars, older than the town, older than the war. Because the war and the winter are what drove our people to this harbour. But there was already something here when they came, and it was in the trees. You have to understand what the woods were to those first people. Not a park, not a nice walk of a Sunday. To an Englishman on this coast in that age, the forest was the edge of the whole-made world, dark and endless, and full of a cold they'd no words for, and everything they feared came out of it. The war came out of it. Their own dead, when the raids came, were taken back into it. Sermons of that time, real ones, you can read them still, call it the howling wilderness, and they meant it as plain description, not poetry. Men and women and children went into those woods in those years and came out changed, or came out with tales that didn't hold together, or did not come out at all. So, when I tell you our 40 came to this harbour, frozen and starving and grieving, with the great black forest standing over their little scrape of cleared ground, closer than a shout, you understand they were already afraid of the Treeline before ever a hand was lifted at it. They'd good reason. They'd just not met this reason yet. There was a thing in these woods before us. The old talk is sure of that, and I've never found the bottom of it, something that kept to the trees and the dusk and the deep cold, something that had watched God knows what come and go along this shore before an English boot ever pressed the mud of it. It's kin, I've long thought, to that other cold you'll have heard me speak of on indoor nights, the hungry thing in the low, wet ground under the old houses, that calls you down in the voice of your own dead. The same cold country, if you like, only this face of it stands up out of the trees instead of lying under the floor. And it works the one trick that cold has ever needed. It wears whatever will make you answer. To a soul with nobody in the ground to grieve, it's only a friendly figure keeping shy at the edge of a field. And to the grieving, it wears who they've lost. Keep that in your mind, for I'll need it before the night's done. And in that first winter, when our people were dying in the open and burying their dead in their own floors, and near mad with cold and grief and fear, it came to the edge of the cleared ground at the blue hour, tall and still, and it lifted its hand to them, and you have to feel your way into what that was, to a frozen, grieving, half-starved people who'd lost so many on the road down. A figure at the edge of the dark, keeping back, polite, patient, lifting a hand in what looked for all the world like human welcome, in a world that had shown them nothing but teeth. Some of them thought it was one of their own lost come back. Some thought it was the Almighty's mercy, at last, a sign. One of them, we don't have a name, it's too old for names. One of them, on some killing cold evening, stood at the edge of that first clearing and lifted a hand back to the kind, tall figure at the tree line. And it came up, and it came into the first house that answered it. And whatever happened in that house that night is the reason the second house kept its hand down, and the third, and every house since, for 300 years. That's the arrangement this town was really founded on. Not the cellars, not the keeping. Older than those. The founders learned, at the cost of a house full of people, what the thing at the tree line was, and what a lifted hand did. And they did the only thing there was to do with a thing you cannot kill and cannot cross and cannot make leave. They made a line of it. The tree line. You keep to your trees, the town said, in the only language it understands, which is what we do and don't do at dusk. You keep to your trees, and we will keep our hands down. We will not call you, and you will not come. We do not see you. You are not welcome, tonight or any night, world without end. And it keeps the line, because the line is where its own hunger holds it. And we keep our hands down, every soul, every dusk, for 300 years. That is the whole of the peace of Coldharbor. It is one long-held breath from the winter of 1698 to this evening at my window. And every child who waves back, every kind newcomer who doesn't know, lets that breath go for a night. Most of the time, we get the door shut again in time. The Hallorans we did. Not always. There are houses in this town that face the wrong way now, curtains drawn on the field side for good, that we don't talk about and don't take newcomers to see. And there is one that's mine. I was reared in this house, at this window's field, my gran's house, that I was brought to when I was small and had nowhere else, and I'll come to that. And when I was a boy, 7, near enough 8, I did the thing I've spent a life warning against. Not from unkindness, from the opposite. There was a hard winter, and I'd lost my mother that same year, young as I was. And I was a lonely, aching little boy, new to my gran's house, who missed her past all bearing. And one evening at the blue hour, I was at this glass, where I'm sat now, and down at our tree line there was a tall figure, still, faced up at the house. And it lifted its hand to me, slow and glad, like somebody who loved me, and I'd just lost, come back up the field at last. So pleased to see me at the window. And to a boy who'd just put his mother in the ground and wanted nothing in the whole cold world but for that one loved thing to come back up the field to him. You understand? I lifted my hand. I waved back. I was glad too. My gran took my wrist. She'd come into the room behind me and seen, and she took my wrist, not hard, and she brought my hand down to the sill, and she held it there, and she said, very low, not to frighten me worse, "We don't wave, Davy, we don't ever wave." And then she did the thing I've built my whole life on the memory of. She didn't shut the curtain and hurry me to bed. She sat down with me at this window in the dark, with the one lamp lit, and she kept me there beside her while it stood at our tree line. And she taught me, a boy of 7, how to keep my hand down, how to look at it and not answer it, how to let it want you and give it nothing, because I'd lifted my hand the once, and that could not be taken back, and the only gift she had left to give me was how to live the rest of my life at a window with that at the bottom of my field. It came up nearer, those weeks after, the way it does off a single wave to the middle of the field the once. And we held, my gran and I, hands down, night on night, till it went back to the trees to wait. And it has waited there ever since. She's long gone now, my gran, and how I lost her is a tale for another fire, an indoor one. And I've kept this window since, alone, the way she taught me at 7. The one lamp lit low, so the room shows warm and ordinary, and my chair set here at the blue hour, while there's light enough left over the trees to keep my watch. And I'll tell you the truth, I've told no newcomer, only you tonight, because you've sat the whole way through with me, and you've earned the whole of it. It's out there now, this evening, where it's been my whole life. If you were to lean to the glass now and look down our field, past the wall to where the grass gives out into the trees, you'd find it against that last pale strip of sky over the woods, tall, keeping very still, faced up at this warm lit window where the old man who waved at it once, 70 years gone, sits talking to a friend. It will lift its hand to me before the night's out. It does most nights, and I'll do what my gran taught me. I'll look at it, and I'll keep my hand in my lap. And that's the whole of the peace I've got. And it's enough, because it's held 70 years, and it'll hold tonight. So that's why I keep you back of an evening and tell you these. Not to frighten you off your own good bright modern life, where I hope to God you've no field and no tree line, and nothing at the foot of it that knows your name. But if you ever should, if you ever come to stand at some window at the blue hour, in some old quiet place, and see a tall figure keep still at the edge of the dark and lift its hand to you, glad like it loves you, like it's been waiting so long and is so pleased you're home. You look at your feet and you keep your hand down and you go inside to the warm, and you never ever wave back, however lonely it looks, especially then. Now the light's gone, and I've kept you long enough, and your own bed's waiting. Off you go, into the warm. Don't look down the field on your way. There's a good soul. No need, tonight or ever. Just keep to the path, and keep your hand at your side, and get you home. The fire's lit again next Friday. Mind how you go.